Good evening, how are you? I hope you are enjoying the drinks, and in a few minutes, you will be enjoying the rest of the cocktail. Welcome to Guatemala, welcome to the College Freedom Forum. This is the 5th College Freedom Forum that we celebrate here at Universidad Francisco Marroquín. And so, welcome to our friends from the Human Rights Foundation, and welcome to our friends from Reason. We are so happy to be hosting the College Freedom Forum back to back with Reason in Guatemala. So welcome to UFM, welcome to Guatemala, welcome to the College Freedom Forum, welcome to Reason in Guatemala. So many things are going to happen, will be happening in the next couple of days here. And I will just say a couple of things about the event, the College Freedom Forum. And I think it's very important to realize that the idea of human rights, the College Freedom Forum is the most important event on human rights that is organized in universities. And the name is not the Human Rights event, it's not the Human Rights University event, it's the College Freedom Forum. And there are very good reasons for that. There are many reasons for that. I think one of the most important reasons for that, and the Javier from Human Rights Foundation perhaps can tell you more about this, but I find a very good historical reason for being called College Freedom Forum. And it's that the idea of human rights didn't exist before the discovery of America. The idea of human rights started when the Europeans discovered America. And they started thinking about, do we all have the same liberties? Initially, no one spoke about rights. People spoke about liberty. Should we all have the same, do we have the same natural liberties? Should we all enjoy the same liberties or not? And this was a very important discussion. And many people, most people thought, no, that is not the case. Not all of us should enjoy the same liberties. However, a group of Dominicans first, and then many other people, started claiming that, no, this is an error. Every human being should enjoy the same liberties. And coercion is not acceptable against people that have not initiated force against other people. And this is the way that the idea of human liberty started by first Francisco de Vitoria, and then many other late scholastic authors, and in time it turned into the idea of human rights. This is the origin of human rights, and it's very important to link it and to continue linking it to liberty, to individual liberty. Francisco Marroquín, who gives the name to our university, was the first bishop ordered in the Americas. And he has a huge correspondence with Charles I or Charles V, depending on how you look at him, and with Philip II. And in most of his letters, he defends the liberty and the freedom of the indigenous people to be able to sell for free prices in the market, the liberty that they should enjoy, working for whoever they want to work, and the liberty to trade. So this is a very important thing. The idea, that idea, later we call that human rights, and we're very used to use the term, but it started this fight for freedom that a very small group of scholars started, and later became, fortunately, a big movement around the world. So we're very happy to host the 5th College Freedom Forum of the Human Rights Foundation here at Universidad Francisco Marroquín. And I'm especially thankful to the speakers who make time in their very busy agendas to come here and to stop their fight and come here to Guatemala and tell us their stories. So Tutu, Vanessa, Rodrigo, Felix, Roya, and Joanny, thank you so much for coming to Guatemala and being with us here this next, today, tomorrow, and sharing with us your stories, your fight for freedom in your countries. also like to thank the Human Rights Foundation. It's the 5th year that the Human Rights Foundation, it was the first time that the Human Rights Foundation went out of the US to do a College Freedom Forum, was to come here to Guatemala. It is the 5th year. I think it's the 50 years. We invite authorities. I'm not sure if there's any authority in human rights commissions here this time. We have not been successful in the previous years. Is anyone here from Human Rights Commissions? No. No. Once again, from the Human Rights Foundation, it looks like we were not successful in that sense. But I heard from Thor Halvorsen that it took you 6 years to convince some human rights authorities from United Nations to go to Oslo, right? Okay, so we have 1 more year. So thank you, Javier, thank you, Roberto, thank you the whole team for coming here, for preparing this. And I would love to thank also our sponsor, LGTB for Freedom, for Liberty, who has sponsored again this event and is also sponsoring the next event with reason. And without them, this would not be possible. In many authoritarian countries, one of the big tragedies that we have seen again and again is how gays has been, especially we have the example of in Cuba and Nicaragua now. Felix was telling me today how gays have been, their liberties has been seized by those governments that they say that they care about the people and they care about social issues. So it's especially important for us to have this support, to say that every human being, that the dignity of every human being, and that every human being should enjoy liberty and freedom regardless of their religious belief, regardless of their sexuality, regardless of their work and the goals they pursue. So thank you, John. Thank you, Dale. Thank you so much for supporting us again with the College Freedom Forum. Without you, this would not be possible. So thank you. And with that, I would love to ask Javier El-Hage to come to the podium and speak. He has been behind many of the projects of the Human Rights Foundation. He started the legal department of the Human Rights. He has been defending people whose liberty has been seized in many different countries. They have a program defending those activists who have been imprisoned, who have been persecuted for their ideas, and at the same time, I don't know how he makes time to organize events. I don't know how you do this. To organize events and to go around the world to keep the idea of human rights and individual liberty together. Thank you for coming to Guatemala. Thank you for being here. And Javier, please come to the podium.
Thank you. Well, we'll start from the last part. Well, the way we get to do it is by having someone else do it, like Roberto in particular. He has led the entire operation of having this College Freedom Forum this year. He's an attorney like me, and we've both really worked a lot in putting this event together, as well as Alvaro, Janice, are the main colleagues here from New York. Is there anyone else that is not here? So the four of us, 2 lawyers, 1 economist, PhD in economics, and Janice, who's a wonderful activist from Bolivia and an amazing organizer, has been able to have participated in making this happen. So thank to them on behalf of the Human Rights Foundation for helping this way. Also, to start from the last part, I want to thank the LGBTQ for Liberty organization for making this event happen. As Gabriel said, without the disinterested support of Dale and John and the organization in general, this wouldn't wouldn't have happened. So we're very, 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 very grateful for that. From the perspective of HRF, human rights group, probably the only human rights group that is a member of the Atlas Network. I don't know if you've heard of that organization. So the only human rights group or one of the few human rights groups that is probably open to the idea of economic liberty as opposed to just political liberty being a value. So for the Human Rights Foundation, partnering up with UFM in order to do an Oslo Freedom Forum is a treat, is an amazing thing. It's one of the treats that we have through the year working on human rights around the world. And the main reason it's a treat, I can tell you one specific example right now. Coming from New York, I'm from Bolivia, but I've lived in New York for 12 years now. So UFM, this specific place, is the only place where you say, well, human rights started because a group of Dominicans decided to get together and you know, talk about liberty and stuff. Any normal person from New York would think of Daddy Yankee, of like a big, you know, reggaeton singer, a Dominican, which are many famous. But only here, you don't need to make the qualification that it was a group of Dominican priests, from theologians, from an order that was very big at that time of history in narrowing down the ideas of liberty, putting them on paper, and creating the modern freedom movement, you know, spurring the Enlightenment, or the better parts of the Enlightenment around the world. So that's how we're humble participating with UFM in any event, because we believe it's probably the best university around the world, period. Like not just a university, a great university in Guatemala, but like a university that has the ability to maintain the principles of universality, of liberty, of inquiry that inspired the freedom movement, which later translated in the 20th century, second part of the 20th century, in the human rights movement. So grateful with you, Gabriel. Happy and proud of having this relationship, and we hope to maintain it over the years. We specialize as a human rights group. Believe it or not, it's pretty unique among human rights groups. We specialize in authoritarian countries. You'll say, what? Human rights groups specialize? Yes. The majority of human rights groups, mainstream human rights groups that you see in the news, invest, and we've actually run the numbers at some point, actually went over their websites and looked at their videos, their press releases, reports, etc. Invest most of their time. We're talking in the Americas, a normal human rights group will invest 70%, 69%, I'm lying, it's 69% of their time talking about human rights issues in the US. That's good. The US is not it's an imperfect democracy, imperfect Republican arrangement. But obviously, from a basic liberties perspective, there are a lot of countries around the world that are in much worse condition. Cuba, for example, when we looked at these numbers from Human Rights Watch many years ago, just said, sorry, Human Rights Watch, but the 2% of their time over 7 years, between 1996 and 2012 or something, only 2% of the time was devoted to do anything about Cuba, which is not just a totalitarian country. As you will hear from Ioannis Sanchez, who's here, a survivor, an amazing leader in Cuba, that lives in Cuba, that has managed to be here today. Thank you, Ioannis, for being here. Cuba is not just a totalitarian country, it's a 60-year-old totalitarian, it's run by a 60-year-old totalitarian elite, a family who doesn't rest by just, you know, completely oppressing 11 million Cubans, but they also are very, very active in trying to subvert democracy and basic liberties around Latin America. That way, they took over Venezuela, who incredibly, in 2019, is pretty much Cuba 1961. It's ridiculous, but it's happening. Nicaragua and Evo Morales in Bolivia, fortunately, were of the ilk that they completely destroyed civil liberties and political rights, but they were fairly, you know, corrupt and open to some levels of economic freedom. As a result, Nicaragua doesn't have the levels of misery that you see in Venezuela or in Cuba, but it's in that direction for sure. And in Bolivia, we got lucky. Last year, we had an amazing activist from Bolivia here at the College Freedom Forum. She's working at HRF now, and she was instrumental, along with a number of civil liberties groups within Bolivia, in getting rid of the authoritarian regime there, led by Evo Morales. And now we're in a transition situation where we're going to have free and fair elections for the first time in 14 years next June. So keep us in your prayers, or whatever type of God you pray to. Keep us in your thoughts so that we can transition successfully into a fairly stable, democratic, liberal democratic country. But that's not, I mean, the Nicaraguans have not been as lucky. Definitely the Venezuelans and the Cubans, it's a shame. We have a Nicaraguan, Felix Madariaga, a hero from Nicaragua, you're going to hear from tomorrow. If Nicaragua ends up transitioning to democracy, Felix is going to be the unity candidate to lead a future democratic government in Nicaragua. He has done that, as you have to do those things in authoritarian countries, by risking by putting skin on the game and risking your life. He has collaborators that have been kidnapped, raped, people that work closely with him that have been, his entire family is outside Nicaragua right now, but still he leads essentially the opposition and pro-human rights movement within Nicaragua. So you're going to hear more about him tomorrow. Rodrigo Diamante has been living, unfortunately, for the past 2 or 3 years in the United States because he was a big activist in Venezuela. You're going to hear more from him tomorrow. He's also sitting in the same table as Felix over there. And his organization got destroyed. Their papers were, like, their offices were completely raided, and everyone in prison. Fortunately, he was able to leave, but he knows he's remained active at Harvard in opposing dictatorship within Venezuela and helping also all of the movements that have happened since 50 governments, more or less, have recognized a parallel government, a different alternative regime to that of Nicolás Maduro, and that obviously is a unique thing that has happened in the history of, post-Westphalian planet Earth, in terms of the international community, 50 governments recognizing a different government, and Rodrigo's work has been instrumental to that, and he'll speak more about that tomorrow. Leaving the Latin American continent that we're more familiar with, we have 3 representatives. One from Asia, Tutul. Tutul is from Bangladesh. He is a survivor, like literally a survivor. He survived a nasty machete attack for being the owner of a publisher, of a library, essentially, of a bookstore, that he dared to publish in Bangladesh things that were written by people who did not believe in the God that most people believe in Bangladesh. As a result, mobs armed with machetes literally stormed into dozens of libraries within Bangladesh and beat people up and killed several of those people that suffered the attacks. Thankfully, Tutul survived that attack, and he's here to tell us his story about the lack of freedom and his push to fight for freedom of speech and freedom of information within Bangladesh, also sitting at that table. Similar story from Africa, the niece of an important, prominent journalist from Eritrea. You've heard of Eritrea. Is considered to be, along with North Korea, perhaps the 2 countries that are the most totalitarian, the most closed, the most repressive. She comes here to speak about the story of, she's an exile herself since the 90s, and her uncle got imprisoned in 1991 and has been in prison, not later after the independence in 1991, but he's been in prison for close to 20 years now. So he was in prison in 1998, more or less. She'll tell us the story of her family and her uncle, and the plight of the Eritrean people generally. And the Middle East, finally, is the one area of the world beyond Africa, Latin America, Asia, that has been in the news over the past, since 9/11, really. And we have an amazing representative of what can be of the Middle East if freedom ends up being the norm there. Roya from Afghanistan, who's sitting again at the same table over there, she's a businesswoman who led internet and pro-technology organization for several years. She led the team that won a very prestigious international prize from Afghanistan that involves technology, and she obviously had to leave. She got specific threats from the Taliban, which we've heard of also after 9/11. Everyone knows about it. She got threats from the Taliban and resisted, and she goes back to Afghanistan throughout all the turmoil after the U.S. Got into the Middle East at that point through Afghanistan. She has been going back to the country and kept her organization there and kept fighting for freedom in a context that is obviously very dangerous and that involves a huge degree of commitment, personal commitment, and risking their own life. So I wanna, if you have glasses, I wanna raise a glass that I don't have a glass, but that's fine, to freedom and to these total heroes of, to HRF, to CFF, to specifically to UFM for having invited us and allowing us to be here, but more importantly, and first and foremost, to the activists that represent what's best of the human spirit, what is best of people that are willing to give their lives, their entire livelihoods, their families, to fight for this thing that we all agree on. Freedom is great. Everyone on the left, on the right, we think that we all agree on freedom. But it takes people that are willing to risk their lives and everything in order to put a picture to it, to make it material, to make it something real. We're gonna hear from them today and tomorrow, and to freedom and to the activists of the Oslo Freedom Forum. Cheers. Thank you. Vanessa from Eritrea, who I just mentioned.
Thank you so much. Just to explain why I've been so happy today since we've been received in the way that we've been received, I want to give a little bit of context about my country and my story. So as already was mentioned, my uncle's a journalist, has been imprisoned for almost 20 years. He is a notorious, prominent, vocal, critical photographer, journalist, documentary maker. Most categories he's covered. And he was imprisoned because he believed that his people deserved to have justice and freedom and human rights. He was imprisoned at a time where the government was transitioning from becoming a new country to establishing a new state. And he knew that there was a risk to speaking up. Everyone told him to stop speaking up, to stop criticizing, to stop being so vocal. And in response, he always told them, if we don't give them a voice, no one will. When he was imprisoned, the government did not only imprison him, they imprisoned people like him, so 9 other journalists, and have since shut down every single institution in the country that can speak up for the people of Eritrea. There is no university, there is no parliament, there is no civil society, there is no constitution. There's literally no way that the Eritrean people can speak up for themselves. So in Eritrea's case, international support and solidarity is not only important, but it's absolutely vital for us to be able to have any kind of impact and any kind of pressure on our regime. So being able to be here in Guatemala is not just an incredibly fun opportunity that all my friends are very jealous of, but it's an important opportunity for my country to get solidarity from a place that I don't think a lot of people knew about us and about our struggle. A lot of people probably did not know that Eritrea is one of the most censored countries in the world, that has one of the biggest exodus on the planet. So thank you, not only from me and from my people, but on behalf of all the activists you are giving a platform to speak out to an audience that probably did not know about our struggles and our situations, and probably did not know about the power that they have in changing the lives of so many other people. Thank you to EFM for having us, to all their sponsors for making it possible for us to be here, to HRF as always for inviting us and giving us a platform, and to all of you who've come here tonight to listen and meet us, and of course everyone who's coming tomorrow to listen. So thank you so much.